Hello, good listeners. Welcome to Tales from the Mennonite Heritage Archives, where we bring you stories about people, places, and events from Mennonite history. I'm your host, Dan Dick. Thanks for tuning in. Last week, we brought you part one of a conversation I had with Elmer Hildebrand, CEO of Golden West Radio, when we spoke in October of 2025. We left off our conversation with Elmer sharing about how Golden West Radio's traditional radio medium has evolved to include internet portals during a time when many small-town newspapers have shut down. In part two, we pick up our conversation again, talking about Elmer's interest in Mennonite history. To make the most of this episode, you might want to listen to part one first. Here now is part two of our conversation, which has been edited for length. You also have a personal interest in Mennonite history. Has that always been the case, or is that something more recent?
That sort of developed as we, traveled down this road, and so we've actually gone to the Ukraine where our forefathers came from. We've gone to Poland, to that area, and obviously to Holland and stuff. The more you see of that history, the more you actually find it fascinating. And so,
Golden West has been very supportive in the sharing of content from Mennonite history. One example is Gerhard Entz's Low German Stories that aired for decades. Mm-hmm. In your estimation, what does sharing our history contribute to the community?
Well, over my many years of being in this business, I find that many times young people don't have a lot of interest in history. But as they get older, that changes. And the history all of a sudden becomes more important. And we've been wanting to provide whatever kind of support we can to this kind of history. The interesting part with Gerhard Entz, he went to attend a conference in, I think it was Brazil, many, many years ago. And so I was on the board with Gerhard at the Mennonite village in Steinbach. And so we knew each other well. And I asked him if he wouldn't mind, phoning us from the conference, with a daily report, which was about a 10-minute report and he did that. He loved doing that. So he phoned every day of the conference with a 10-minute report, which we could then air. And then when he came back, I asked him, well, if he wanted to, we would provide him with a half hour once a week where he could just talk about not only the conference that he'd been at, but whatever came to his mind as it related to Mennonite history. And we provided him with a tape recorder. So for many years, he would turn on the tape recorder and start talking and then finish half an hour later. And he may have had some notes, but he certainly didn't script what he was saying. And then, after half an hour, he would say, "Na nu ist die Zeit aufgerannt, good Nacht."
Which translates to, well, now the time has run out, good night.
And you bet. And so, and he kept doing these for a very long time. And so we kept the tapes of all of those programs and then ultimately gave them to the gallery here, for whatever historical value they might have.
That's the MH archives, yeah.
Right. So, again, it's the kind of history that I don't know if you can get anywhere else, because all of his stories were from his personal experience. And he had a way with the Low German language that was fascinating, and people just loved listening to it.
The Mennonite Heritage Archives has a collection of photos and diaries from Cleo Heinrichs, who worked for Golden West Radio for some 29 years. She voiced radio commercials. What else did she do, and what are your memories of her?
Well, she was a copywriter. She wrote ads. That was her job. She was, I think, writing short stories or short reports about Plum Coulee for the local newspaper. And so we were looking for a copywriter, somebody that writes commercials. And so she came and said, well, she would give it a try. And so she stayed for 29 years. She also did Low German commercials. She did the commercials for Wien Smeibeldorp and a few others. And so she was an interesting lady, and we have good memories of her being there.
Wien Smeibeldorp. Now that's a word. You're testing my Low German, your furniture store?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Pretend for a moment that you could travel back in time. Is there a significant person from Mennonite history, either family or friend or someone you don't know much about, that you'd like to speak with?
Because of my many years on the board of the Mennonite Heritage Village in Steinbach, I actually got to meet a lot of people that went through much hardship coming out of Ukraine during the Second World War, and those kind of stories, make your hair stand on end. I've been fortunate enough to be involved in a variety of organizations where I've heard stories that are hard to believe, but yet they're true. I think one of the reasons that we need to keep looking at history is if we don't do that, history will repeat itself. The other thing that struck me from some of the people that I talked to that went through those horrific times, many times they were reluctant to actually talk about it because I think that brought back memories that were too horrible. Yeah, Gerhard Lawrence was somebody that I enjoyed spending a lot of time with because he had knowledge and information that were invaluable. Gerhard Lawrence was, again, one of the folks that was on the board of the Heritage Village in Steinbach.
Not too long ago, you discovered a house barn in a small community in Manitoba and decided you were going to do something with it. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. For some reason, and the reason for this is not well known, for some reason we attended a few things in Neubergthal when they had some activities there. And
for those folks who don't know, Neubergthal is a national historic site that restored Mennonite village in southern Manitoba.
Right. I think it's the only village that has more than one house barn left in Canada. So, and there actually people live in the house barns. So we had an idea. Well, we had a cottage at Black Sturgeon Lake, north of Kenora, which we weren't really getting to. And so we thought, well, we get rid of that, and maybe we can set up something closer to home. And so we found this house barn that was dilapidated in Neuhorst, which is just north of the U.S. border. And so the fellow that owned it was getting ready to tear it down because it was in the way. This thing has been used for storage, and we then decided, well, we would see if we could move that to Neubergthal and put it on a foundation in Neubergthal, and then maybe try to restore it to its original shape, which we did. And it now turns out that's where it's like a summer cottage for us. Hilda, my wife, has done an amazing job to almost turn it into a museum. It's been an amazing journey. And if anybody is interested in how that house barn was moved, you can go to YouTube and go to a house barn move, and you'll see a video of the process, which started at sunrise in Neuhorst and ended at sunset in Neubergthal on a cold February day.
I'm going to be going to look at that for sure.
And now it's a facility that is very interesting for people that see it. We have no idea what we'll ultimately do with it, but it's in that heritage village, and we've found it quite satisfying to actually bring it to life, so to speak.
One more addition to the collection of house barns in Neubergthal.
Yeah.
I don't know too many communities that collect house barns. I think that's a very unique story.
Yeah, for sure. It's a unique village.
Yeah. Do you know anything at all about the origins or the history of the original owner of the plot where that house barn came from in Neuhorst?
Well, we have some sketchy history of that, but there's still pieces that are missing. The village of Neuhorst emptied out in the 20s when everybody moved to Mexico en masse. And so it looks like the original house barn was built in 1876 or 77. And the house is built by stacking 2x6s. So it's built like an elevator. And it's solid like nobody's business. The barn was less sturdy, so in the move they had to actually stabilize it so it didn't fall apart. The opportunity arose where some of the family that grew up in that house barn actually came to see us and visit, and so they gave us some information, but that wasn't the original family, so it was a family that lived there later. So
I don't know anyone who has worked in the same company for 66 years-ish. What keeps you engaged?
I have a standard answer when people ask me when I'm retiring. The answer is as soon as what I do becomes work. So it really hasn't been work. It has enabled me to be in an industry that is somewhat unique. And I've been in it long enough. It's enabled me to get to know every broadcaster in Canada in one form or another. And it's enabled me to be involved with entities, organizations, people that I never thought I would be. The process is interesting, invigorating, and it gets me up every morning.
Thank you so much for coming in. I've really enjoyed our visit.
You're welcome. Thanks.
That concludes the second and final part of my conversation with Elmer Hildebrand, businessman, hockey fan, philanthropist, and longtime CEO of Golden West Radio. As a special online bonus for our listeners, you can hear 30 minutes of CFAM's opening ceremony broadcast from 1957 at mharchives.ca. That's also where you can find photos related to this story, listen to this episode again, and find the Cleo Heinrichs collection of photos and diaries, as well as century history books Cleo worked on for the communities of Horndean and Plum Coulee, Manitoba. What are you taking away from this program? Let us know by dashing off an email to info@mharchives.ca.
Hello, I'm Archivist Conrad Stace. The Mennonite Heritage Archives is a community-supported memory center that relies on donations from community members like you. To support this program and the preservation of Mennonite history, visit mharchives.ca and click on Support, or give us a call at 204-560-1998. Thanks also to our partners, Canadian Mennonite University, the Centre for Transnational Mennonite Studies, Mennonite Church Canada, and Golden West Radio.
In our next episode, we'll bring you an interview with Doug Clausen, Executive Minister of Mennonite Church Canada. He'll share what he's learned about his Mennonite ancestry, his family's early homestead in Canada, and the little-known Beaver Lodge Mennonite Church in the Peace River region of northern Alberta. It seems appropriate to wrap up this two-part series with some words from the founder of CFAM, A.J. Thiessen, which we've excerpted from the 1957 tape recording of the station's opening ceremony. We'll be back next week with another story about people, places, and events from Mennonite history.
We shall welcome your suggestions, criticisms, and other letters at all times. Do write in and tell us how well CFAM can be heard in your area. Manitoba's farm and good music station will be on the air for your listening pleasure.